Well, good morning. Lovely that you could join me for a coffee this morning. This is kind of a little hidey hole around the side of the house where we often have early breakfast because it's such a sunny spot. And although you can't see it, I'm looking out, and the massive pear tree is probably the biggest pear tree I've ever seen. Is in full blossom, and our bees are having a wonderful time on there, absolutely alive. So it's a great morning. We're surrounded by birds. I can hear bumblebees and the cotoneaster just down here. And I thought I'd start this morning by talking about miracles. Um, as some of you know, that I'm a dual citizen. I'm a citizen of the United Kingdom, but also of Canada. And I spent a lot of time on Vancouver Island as a tree surgeon, and then did some logging in the interior of BC. So involved in preservation of trees as well as using trees for timber. A number of years ago, my goddaughter Jessie got me involved in the Ancient Forest Alliance, and it's something you can look up. And I think Jill put up a link to a particular group of movies which are well worth a look today on our website. The Ancient Forest Alliance is very much involved with preserving old growth timber and making public awareness of some of the miracles of nature. And there's one particular tree on Vancouver Island up by Port Renfrew, a town that was just involved in logging, and that's all they were, involved in cutting down trees. They've now become the tallest tree capital of the world, and they're really using that as a draw. So very small town, but they're having all kinds of eco-tourists go and see. And there's one particular tree not too far from there called Big Lonely. And back in 2011, a man called Doug Cronin, who was a forest engineer, was going through what was then all old growth timber. And he came across this one particular tree, and he marked all the way around for clear cut, but he decided, he put a tape around this particular tree, and it said "Leave Tree." And that tree now has become a sort of symbol of trying to preserve what was then all old growth. And I'll just give you a few statistics. 1.5 million hectares of forestry or forest was cut down this last year, and it's going as we speak. So you can almost say another hectare gone, another hectare gone. But it makes you realise how precious our forests are. And this particular tree, it was climbed, and that's one of the videos that's well worth a look. It made the Natural History Museum photography competition, and it's 70.2 meters, so it's 230 feet high, and I think it's lost some of its top as well, so it's probably taller. It's got a circumference of 11.91 meters, which is 39 feet. So I don't know how many people would have to go around that in a circle, but it's a lot. The diameter is 12.4 feet. There's enough timber in that one tree to frame 5 2,000 square meter houses, so it's 10,000 square feet of house. Absolutely phenomenal. It takes about 500 years for a tree like that Douglas fir to grow to 500 meters. So probably that tree was a seedling when Leif Erikson, the Viking explorer, was building sod huts on the other side of Canada in Newfoundland 1,000 years ago. So it makes you think, doesn't it? It's really special and just a miracle of nature. So I thought I'd start off with one of my great loves, which is trees. But then I'm going to tell you about another man who had a miracle in his life. I think with what's going on around us, I'm going to mention near the end people who need miracles in their lives. But this man was a man called Caedmon, and he was known as a Bard of Christ. He died back in 680 AD. And as it says here, one of the marks of Celtic Christianity was not to destroy the culture of the people when bringing the message of Christ to a new place, but to put Christ at the center of things. And an important element of Celtic culture was the singing and storytelling in the mead halls. And it's nice to know that in the monasteries and the nunneries there were mead halls where people could enjoy a pint or two of mead. And the great Bede tells us that in Whitby Abbey, who was run by Hilda, the abbess, the tradition of gathering or the passing of the harp for storytelling and poetry was sung was very much part of community life there. So it was all a lot of oral tradition going on. And Caedmon, he was a cowherd. He was somebody who looked after the cows, very shy, under Hilda's Whitby compound. And every time the harp would be passed round, he'd run away and he'd hide in the cowshed because he couldn't sing and he couldn't tell stories well, and he was just embarrassed about the whole thing. So when the harp was on its way to him, he would sneak out and go home or go back to the cowshed. Well, one night in the cowshed, he had a dream of an angel, and the angel came and told him to sing the story of creation, which is phenomenal when you think about it. He was a man that couldn't hardly hold a conversation with lots of people. But then in the morning he remembered the song and he sang it as he went about his day. And then more songs and more stories came to him. And it was heard by the others, and eventually Hilda, the abbess, heard about him. And she asked him if he would share his new gift, this miracle, with the people. Well, of course, his songs and stories were all in the language of the Angles, rather than in Latin, as was most common. And his stories, for the first time, were given in the common native Angles language, which was amazing. He became known as the Bard of Christ to the English, and being the first to tell the stories of the Bible in his own native English or Anglian tongue. And he was inspired by his continuing visionary dreams, and his story is fittingly shared through poetry here, as he is the patron saint of poetry and poets. So here's his story in poetry. The first of English poets he, who nurtured by the Whitby sea, a poor and simple cowherd seemed, yet here the gold of poetry gleamed, though hidden deep within his soul. For from the company he stole, fearful to be found afraid, when they their entertainment made, the very least amongst the throng, with little speech or any song. Then in the stillness of one night his soul was filled with heavenly light, a vision of the world being made, of God's creation all displayed. As in the stable stall he lay, dreaming he heard an angel pray, and speak to him of God's great world, and how its majesty unfurled. Then day by day to his inspired mind, that he seemed deaf and dumb and blind, there came sweet words so bright and clear. Then Mother Hilda came to hear, stayed with all her abbey folk, while Caedmon, poet of Whitby, spoke. No longer now to steal away, when came his turn the harp to play, for in his Saxon mother tongue were all his splendid verses sung, and improvised with great delight in many a stormy winter's night, when firelight filled the raftered hall, in far-off ancient Stronshouse, then folk would learn the poems by heart, or memorize a favourite part, making them one with Christian praise in those remote, unlettered days. Isn't that lovely? And so a miracle came to his life, and he was someone who knew his human limits, but he was willing to go beyond them when the Spirit of God intervened. And he recognized the divine presence within his dreams and stepped out boldly in the spiritual gifting which he had received. We all need the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and it's really important that we seek them, because it's like having an unopened parcel with the ribbons, and it's all looking very pretty, but unless you open it, and unless you see what's inside, and unless you see the gifts that God has for each one of us as individuals, then we'll never know what God has for us. And I think our challenge today is, how willing are we to step out and do things for which God may give us the gifting, which may have previously thought were not even within our own ability. Are we the one who continue to run away, or would we step out in faith and do what God seems willing to call you to do? So something to think about throughout the day, perhaps. We have some prayers, and I'm using again our Celtic bookings of Book of Peace. So blessed are those who weep, for their tears will be wiped away. Light, golden light, fresh from source, colours, creation's colours, calling our senses. Life, life in its oneness, life in its manifold oneness, all from you. For you are the sun from whom the morning shines. You are the river in whom each life form flows, each face, each race, each cell within our ever-living souls. This new day we greet you. The psalmist says, wait for God, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Where your treasure is there, your heart will be also. And the Quran says, remember God deep in your soul with humility and reverence. So for the freshness of this new day, thanks be to you, O God. For morning's gifts of clarity, its light like the first day's dawn, thanks be to you. In this newborn light, let us see afresh, in this gateway onto what has never been before, let our souls breathe hope. For the earth, for the creatures, for the human family, let our souls breathe hope. And some special prayers today for one or two people that have been in contact with us. For Beryl, her mum has had a brain bleed, and she can't see her, she can't be with her in hospital, and that's causing a lot of anxiety. So pray for Beryl and her mum. A friend of mine is going for treatment for cancer on Thursday. Remember him. Our friend Fiona up in Scotland, her son is trapped in Beijing, and his wife is trapped in Texas with the children. They can't see each other, and they can't contact, well, they can contact each other, but, and there are a lot of people like that who are cut off. Another close friend who's got low-grade lymphoma, and his wife, we need to pray for them today. And friends with elderly parents, different houses, they can see them, but they can't touch, and they can't give them a hug. That's really tough, isn't it? So then our final prayer blessing, as we remember those people, and the ones that only you will know. On this day, the blessings of heaven. On this day, the blessings of earth. On this day, the blessings of sea and sky, to open us to life, to ground us in life, to fill us with life and with wonder. On those we love this day, on every human family, the blessings of heaven, the blessings of earth, the blessings of sea and sky. Amen. Lovely to be with you today. We'll see you again on Sunday morning, and enjoy your coffee. Bye now. Finished.